And so one of the big ones, and I talked about this before, is the coordinates not established early enough or correctly. You know, this can really be something that can drag a project down. When we're only meeting weekly or some every 2 weeks, if we don't have these models in the correct location, we really can't run a clash detection or start our coordination process. So if the first week we get models, you know, 3 of them are in the right place and 2 aren't, you know, that's a lost week. And then we go to the next week, and then, you know, if somebody's still not on the right system, then we go to the following week, and very quickly you can be a month, you know, into coordination and really not have accomplished anything just because your coordinates weren't set up properly or people weren't sticking to them. So it's really something that's very important to establish early and correct. Missing something that should be included in the model. So, you know, things. An example would be, you know, maybe a walk-in cooler or refrigerated room, something that's provided by a third party. You know, maybe they're not part of the MEP subcontractors, so they're not in the model, and then all of a sudden these guys, you know, they show up and they've got a cooler that's got a compressor and equipment on top of it, and you haven't planned for that. You didn't expect it. You didn't include it in the model, and now your coordination process doesn't work. Another would be the valves that we talked about. You know, you didn't include them, and now the valves you can't be actuated, or clearance space. You know, we've got everything, you know, like a Swiss watch above the ceiling, but we didn't include any space for somebody to get in there and change a filter that needs to be changed every 100 hours. You know, so that's kind of a failure too. So we want to make sure that we're understanding what's in the project and that we're including everything that should be in it. Level of detail is another, you know, that we see. I talked about the valves earlier. Another example would be, you know, bundles of conduit. So we talked about in this example, we said every conduit over 1.5 inches should be modeled. Well, what if we have a bundle of 24 1-inch conduits? You know, and we've seen it before where somebody says, well, I don't have to model that. It's less than 1 inch. But in reality, that bundle of conduits is a very substantial, you know, piece of the building, and something that we have to incorporate in one way or another into the model. So things like that, understanding, you know, how they work is important. Not having the right people on the team. So coordination meetings are very effective if you have the right people present. You know, I think at a bare minimum, you need all of the MEP trades present. You know, a draftsman or somebody that can make coordination decisions. And in coordination processes where Microdesk's handling, it's very important for us to have a rep from the GC or the CM there to make decisions, to get us information that we may not have access to, and to help us steer the process. Now, there's also other parties that should be involved to an extent. Structural designers and subcontractors, an architect, and MEP engineers. They don't necessarily have to be at the meeting every week, although I think in the beginning of the process it's helpful. But they should be aware of when the meeting is, and they should hopefully try to at least have their phone with them or be available, because very often it comes up that something doesn't look right, or somebody has a question about an architectural feature, and you know, if you can't get a hold of that person or you don't have them present, again, you can have an issue dragging on for a week or two that could really be resolved in just a couple of minutes if you had the right person available and at the meeting. So something that's, you know, very important to establish who's going to be there and who's going to be available. Probably the biggest one is not building the model, building to the model in the field. So this isn't really coordination related. It's a little more construction related, but it's something that that we see quite often is that you know, when it comes time to build what's shown in the model doesn't always get communicated effectively to the folks in the field, and the importance of the model communicated to the people in the field. And so when, you know, when the first guy goes out there to put in his piece of duct, he, you know, he sees a great big open spot to the left, and he says, well, I'm going to run it there. That looks like it makes some sense. And, you know, not realizing that we've got lots of other things that have yet to go in there and that we've put aside room in the model for. So I think that's something that, you know, we can all be aware of, that just because we made it work in the model doesn't mean it's automatically going to work in the field. We need to carry that model into the field. We need to make sure that that everything's installed the way that it was drawn, or it won't work. So I talked a lot about what Microdesk does. So, you know, what role do we play in these coordination processes? A lot of it is things we've discussed, so model setup and management, so setting up that initial Navisworks model, getting everybody on that right coordinate system, managing the files that come in weekly. So like I said, we had 25 models in that one small project. When you multiply that by updates every week, you know, for the months that it takes to do a coordination, you know, it gets to be a large amount of information, and managing that on a A360 site or somewhere else can be a challenge. So hosting meetings, so we host meetings sometimes live, sometimes over a GoToMeeting like we're on now. Go through that model, go through the clashes, you know, track those clashes in the reports that I've showed. Model and file management, so keeping track of all those different models and those files. Setting up and delivering those reports, really keeping track of the process and the responsibilities. Assigning clash resolutions, so as important, or maybe more important than detecting these clashes, is assigning a responsibility and a resolution to it, and making sure that clash is resolved. And tracking progress, you know, how far along are we, how much do we have left, what area are we in, you know, how many clashes do we have that are outstanding, how substantial are they. We also work in assisting everyone in the project in the use of the model. So not everyone is familiar with 3D. Maybe not everybody's comfortable with Navisworks. You know, how can we help you do, like I said, and take that model out into the field and implement it. You know, and really make the most of it, rather than just going through the motions of a BIM coordination and then kind of letting everyone run wild out in the field. And on top of that, all other contract requirements, the RFPs and the construction contracts that we see nowadays are much more sophisticated in the BIM department than they have been in the past, and I think we make a good technology partner to help you to address those and really tackle not just the BIM coordination, but any other BIM requirements that you may come across in your project. So that's just you know, a little bit of the ways that we you know, can assist in a coordination process and kind of beyond. So I think that's all I had for today.